Hello, everyone. Lots of new faces here. That's exciting. Let's get started. And before we get started, right, so let me just quickly go through how we go about doing this. So I want to help you with your specific niche, your specific keywords. So feel free to dump any keyword that you're working with or any sort of niche that you're working with right into the chat window. We'll look at a couple of examples from that list and go through the process of how I would go about creating content. And in that process, answer any questions that you guys have. You can type it in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay, so let's see some keywords while I open up apps. Anything, guys? What are the keywords or niches that you work with? I'm gonna share my screen. Mental health. Okay, so let's see some things related to mental health. Okay, let's just copy this. Search. So we'll find something related to mental health and we'll start creating content based on that. Mental health this morning. Absolutely. I could use some too. Mental health awareness months, quote for mental health. Let's see something very specific, right? Like this is services related stuff, counselors, counseling. How about that? I'm not qualified to be writing this, to be honest, but we'll attempt at it anyways. Okay, so let's generate some title ideas. All right, so what happened currently is that we used a focus keyword, right? So Maldi, this is going to be step-by-step instructions too. So just follow the steps. So what just happened is that Outranking took the focus keyword, which is mental health counseling, went to Google, searched for this particular term, identified the top 20 ranking pages, understood how they were writing titles, what sort of keywords that they were using, and what sort of keyword that Google is recommending that you should use in terms of related keywords. Based on that data, it went and created 5 ideas for titles, which are SEO optimized. Now, how do you measure how SEO optimized these are? By clicking on each of these, you will see what sort of keywords it is targeting and what it isn't, right? So, okay, if you like something, you can click on it and click next. If you like something sort of and want to edit it, you can double click on it and add your own keyword or rephrase it, personalize it, basically. Let me admit a few more people. And then you click next. Now, what I missed previously here is that you can also regenerate this title ideas by adding your own keyword. For example, you wanted to use benefits, right? And now you can target generate again and it will try. So now you see that there's benefits over here in mostly all of them. So it can understand that and generate ideas based on those specific inputs. So let's just select the one that we currently had and click next. We'll do the similar exercise with meta description and select one, or you can double click on it, edit it, and use it. Now, mind that this might have some small issues with the GPT-3 generating content. So we're gonna face that as well. So we'll go through that together and how we solve that challenge. Okay, let's click next. And now in this particular screen, we need to create our outline. So everything that you see over here is leading you to create an outline. Now, how do you measure the effectiveness of your outline is by clicking on the related keywords here and understanding what sort of keywords are driving traffic to the existing pages that are ranking in Google. So these are the related keywords which are associated with mental health counseling that other pages have used in their particular in their content. Okay, we need to find out all the outlines which have this keywords in it. Some keywords might even make sense and some might not make sense, which is okay. You can exclude them. So let's go ahead and look at, and there's some noise coming. There's a bunch of work going on, so I apologize for that. Okay, now let's go ahead and generate section concepts. So what section concepts is, it's going to read the outlines from the first 20 pages. It's going to understand, it's going to clean them, and going to present those ideas in a way that you can start using as structured sections in your outline. So let's generate that. Okay, while it's generating, let's look at this HFK. What does HFK stand for? Is highest frequency keywords. These are single words that we've identified from all the outlines that are ranking that make up majority, or you'd say the most repeated ones, right? Okay, so now the sections are here, and from the top of it, I can see that there's not really that great of a data. Everything is like bouncing off the topics, and people have their own opinion over here. That's what I can understand. I'll tell you how I understand that. If you see, there's only 1, 2, 3, and 4 structured data. The last one is outline intent questions. Whenever you have fewer sections that come up in section concepts, what it essentially means is that the data out there is all over the places. There is no consistent pattern. And that could also mean an opportunity, but that could also mean a challenge, because it's all sorts of things ranking for it. It's going to be difficult for you to quite judge what you should create. And for specific topics like this, where expertise or / opinions come into picture, you might want to consider all of these as well. Okay, so mental health counseling, right? How to become a counselor? I don't think so, right? Like, this is not what I want to do. This is related to mental health counseling. So I'm probably looking for counseling. So I'm probably looking for a counselor. I don't want to become a counselor. That's what at least I understand. What training do mental health counselors have? What does a mental health counselor do? Mental health counseling programs. So now you can see here that majority of the data that you see over here is mostly related to how you become a mental health counselor and not mental health counseling, right? So, okay, let's go ahead and, okay, so this is the intent that we could identify from existing data. And most of them are looking for career counseling or something like that. And maybe it's my lack of knowledge related to mental health counseling that's leading me to think that, no, this is not what the true intent of the keyword is. It's slightly different. But again, right, like if you are expert in this particular niche and you know what you're talking about, then you can most certainly relate and understand if this makes sense or not. Okay, so since I cannot take away anything from here, that is, let me go ahead and look at SERP outlines. Before I even go to SERP outlines, let's look at Google Path, because Google probably knows better, right? What sort of things are happening. So, okay, what does a counseling psychologist do? Okay, so you understand, right? These are the questions that people are looking for when they are trying to look for this particular keyword, and this makes sense. So my theory of the user intent, where a user is looking for counseling help, is true. So, okay, let's go ahead and add that. What are the differences between clinical psychologist and a counseling psychologist? Okay, you could add that. These are some of the questions that the person who's actually looking for answers to this specific keyword is looking for, right? So, okay, what are the different types of mental health counselors? Okay, this could be very important. What is counseling? Okay, what are different types of therapists? No. What are different types of mental health counselor and psychologist? Okay, so we already covered that. What is the difference between mental health counselor and a psychologist? Okay, so we covered that as well, right? So you can go through some of these things and start adding some of those questions. So right now we are in ideation phase. We're just adding ideas that we want to create content around, and then we'll refine them and start creating content upon it. Okay, so let's go here. Now, mental health counselor training, skills, and salary. Nope, I can skip that. You can go to Forbes. What do mental health counselors do? Okay, maybe not versus a therapist, right? So this is a good thing, right? Like you can add this information. This is useful. Okay, and you can probably break this out. You probably don't need this if you are trying to stay close to the intent. Okay, so you can see some of this stuff started green, right? Started turning green. Your aim should be to get as many of these greens as possible. And when the research is not really great, the chances are the related keyword data is also not going to be that great, because if the data out there is just not so structured, or it's there's not much history behind a particular keyword, you are going to get tons of idea, because even Google is trying to understand what's relevant and what is not. So this can happen, right? And that is why we have two factors. One is highest frequency keyword, and the other one is related keyword data. So this example is specifically challenging because, right, like everyone who has opinions about mental health is going to have probably slightly different opinion too, and different expertise as well. Okay, so you can go through all of these information in here and understand which ones are relevant and which ones are not. So in this case, I couldn't really identify, but let's say I was wrong and you were right. Go ahead and identify no, I was wrong, and your intent was actually to write about how to get into mental health counseling, then you could identify some of the topics that are relevant and add them into your content. So, okay, we've just added this much data. You can rearrange them. You can break them out if you wanted to. So let's say if you wanted to drag this particular section into an H2, you can open it up and drag it in. If you want to break it out, you can click here and break it out, and it goes right above. You can then drag it back to wherever you need it to be. Okay, so this is, you can also drag some of these things internally, or you can open this up and drag right in here as well. So let's just bring it back to where it was. Okay, so some of these things which are relevant are left out. And again, right, like make the best call on what you want to include in the content and take it from there. Okay, so we have what we need, at least in terms of creating an outline. And this is not how you actually create outline. You probably know a lot better than I do. So make sure you have the perfect outline. And once you have that, you can click on create sections outline. Okay, so let's start understanding what some of these controls in the screen means, right? So it already created a URL, a structure for you that you can use right into your WordPress or whatever CMS that you're using, or if you're recommending it to a client, you can recommend him or to use this particular URL. The title, it automatically added a title, and this is just a title tag. It's to show you that, okay, this represents the title, and this is how the system understands that whatever is placed between it, it's actually a meta title, and to score it accordingly. Okay, same goes for meta description. And it added a H1 tag as well. Now you can you can modify the H1 tag if you wanted to slightly. That will not affect your title. You can have that a little different, and that's okay. But make sure that you're not doing keyword stuffing or making it like excruciatingly long, right, for people to read and understand that. Make it concise and make it relevant to what your title is at least. Okay, now let's go ahead and start creating our content. So before you even start creating your content, what you really need to do is start creating an introduction, right? So let's go to methods, and I will identify an introduction that I want to create. So I'm just searching for all the methods related to introductions. And let's go ahead and start creating some introduction. When I click on it, it's going to ask me for a tone. So since I'm going to be probably a health counselor, so you could say a doctor or a psychologist or an expert. So sound expert. Okay, you can change this tones based on anything that you want. You could funny, sarcastic, mother of 5 kids, right? Cyborg, Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, you know, it could be literally anything. You could try out different ways and understand like how this tone works. But folks who are working with different languages, even formal and informal will work over here. So try some of these tones out, do a little bit of writing with it, and then you'll get a grasp of like how it really works. Okay, just click outside of it and then click command. Okay, so as a mental health counselor and therapist, I'm asked to talk with people about my profession on a regular basis. So we said like an expert, right? So when someone is experiencing depression or anxiety, that a person is like, okay, and that is when probably you need mental health counseling, right? So in this blog post, I hope to address some of the questions people ask me, as well as provide us up-to-date information on mental health counseling in general. Great, right? Like this is good, and it sounds professional. It doesn't sound like, you know, I want to sell something or just like regular blogs, right? Which are not sort of medical driven or like have this specific format. You can be a little creative, and you could say, you know what, start with a sarcastic tone or something like that. But for this, you probably want to sound more professional, and that's exactly what it's doing here. Okay. Let's create one more blog introduction, which is my favorite pass. Problem, agitate, solution. So this is very different than what you'd find on other websites or other products. They mostly focus on creating a pass framework for product stuff. We have we are using it specifically to create blog introduction. So let's go ahead and see that. It's going to ask us for an audience. So who's our audience? People. Okay, so if you're really writing for this audience, then make sure that all the content that you write is expert based and not just SERP based, because this is medical opinion. It could really mean a lot of things. So, okay, let's go ahead and command this. Okay, so it started with pain. Mental health counseling has been a controversial topic with many people believing it not to be effective. But mental health counseling is different from traditional therapy that focuses on relationship between therapist and client through feelings, thoughts, and behavior. Okay, this is a hook that it's getting it started with. Then it's agitating. Let's explore how mental health counseling can help those struggling with depression by looking at some of its benefit, as well as types of counselors who provide this type of service to individual, both in person and online. Okay. And then the solution is this particular article, because we're going to give them all the information that they need in order to understand everything about health counseling. So then you delete this and you have got another introduction. You can pick the introduction that you want, customize it according to your need, and move on to the next step. Okay. The next step is for us to actually start creating content, right? So what we can do is now, let's say I want to go to sections. Okay. And this is the outline that we created. Okay, what does a mental health counselors do? Okay, we're going to face some challenges over here when we are writing this content. So pay attention. You will see that some of this data that we're trying to pull might not even be on SERP, right? And we'll specifically try examples where data is actually not on SERP. We'll go find some research and we'll add a custom data as well. Okay, so what does mental health counselors do? Let's start before I even click on generate concepts. Let's understand a few things. This is not going to work unless you have generated concepts. So it says select at least one concept, but we have not generated any concepts yet. This is going to answer this particular question using GPT-3. So it's going to answer this question to help you rank for people also ask box in Google, because the format of the answer is similar, but it is generated by GPT-3, which means that it could have false data or data that might not be practical for this particular niche. So be careful of what it gives out and make sure to do fact checking if you are using only GPT-3. But if you are using concepts, then you will gather factual information. So in that case, facts are already here and you can read through those facts and use the information that you want. Okay, so let's look at an answer from this. Okay, I'm not sure why it got into this. Okay, so mental health counselor is a professional who provides, okay, this is good information. Again, what does a mental health counselor do? It's very general. So it can give you really good information if you were just using that. Now let's see what we can come up with concepts. Okay, so it's saying in concepts, 26% of the adults in the US have mental health diagnosis each year. Mental health can affect a person's quality of life. Mental health counselor assesses and treats mental and emotional health disorder, stuff like that, right? So this is much better data because it is pulled out from existing SERPs. Okay, how do you use this to create content, right? Now, you want to probably start with the answer right away, right? So let me go ahead and delete this, or we can just move this out so we can compare the outputs later. Okay, all right, so we have this. Let's delete this. And what are we going to do is, let's start by building out the paragraph and giving some statistics, right? So you want to say this. Okay, there we go. Now you can see that it is specifically giving you information that is related to what you need to really write. And let's experiment a few other times. So right now I selected the first two. What you could also do is that start right away with the answer first. So mental health counselors assesses blah, 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 right? So let's go ahead and summarize just that one particular concept. Okay, it gave you the answer to what a mental health counselor does, right? So now you can compare this output while I am writing to this output. Okay, then you can build out the remaining paragraphs, right? So the remaining paragraph could say this and this, summarize concepts, and then maybe say, okay, I want to grab this particular concepts and summarize them as well. Okay. I'm just trying to read through it. It could be slightly a little off because the context that we've given is very less. It's okay. You can just double click on it again and then summarize. There we go. So, okay. All right. So it's going based on what it's giving here. It's a cognitive behavioral therapy and stuff like that, right? So it's giving you information that's really, really good, right? That GPT-3 probably wouldn't be able to stay on track and give you. So adjust this information and then move on to your next step. So, or what I usually like to do is start by adding all the ideas and creating that first draft. And then once I have all the content that I need in it, I start from the beginning and then start trimming or adding stuff that I really want from it and finishing each individual sections. Okay, let's move on to some of these other ones, right? So mental health counselors versus therapists. Now let's generate concepts and we'll try a different way of doing certain things as well. Okay. There we go. Okay. So there is lots of information in here, but sometimes it could be a little difficult to read and like make sense of it, right? So let's go ahead and delete this and try a different template of concept. So let's try first thing, related. What is related concepts? Related concepts are when you, it pays attention, related concepts pays attention to your tag or to the heading. What that means is that mental health counselor versus therapist, when it is reading the content, it's going to make sure that everything it pulls out, even from the paragraphs within a section, is going to be related to this and this only, nothing else. While what this does, the regular default one does, is that it's going to go and identify all the concepts from a particular given paragraph and start and give it to you. Okay, so let's go ahead and select related and we'll see some differences, right? So, okay. Everything that it's going to pull out is going to be related to mental health counselor versus a therapist. Delete the ones that are not essential to you, and you can then start building out your content. Okay, probably not that much to write. So you can go and read through some of these things and see what concepts together will make more sense and select those based on that judgment and build out summarize. Okay, so you can see that we're like really getting far along in creating this content, right? So now we pulled out this information directly from SERP data. Now let's go ahead and look at some information that we can pull out, like what does counseling psychologists do, right? Like that is different than this, or it is probably same, right? So we want to find data related to that using our existing research. Now existing research is the top 20 pages that we currently have. So let's go back to sections and we'll see if it gives us any information. It probably will. There we go. So you see that even in the case where you used a different title, which had the same meaning, it gave you information from the same data. There you go. You see that many people face this. So it can understand semantic similarities in existing information or existing research and pull out concepts from that as well, right? This is great because now what you can really do is that, let's say all of these information that you found over here was useless, right? You don't want to use this information. What you can do is add your own custom URLs where you want to pull out the information from. So let's go ahead and create an example. What does not a vet do? What does a health counselor do? Instead of finding it the data from the first particular page, I'll go to the 9th page and open up a random URL. Go back here at this URL, and this is investment group. Okay, all right. Save, and it's going to go and fetch that particular URL and add that information. Okay, all right. Let's go ahead and look here and go back to research. If it did pull out, it should be here. Okay, so now what you can do is that, let's say this is, okay, this is the URL, right, that it pulled out. Okay, great. It has all the data, all the content as well. So now if I don't want to use any of this information, I can just hide all of them. A hide all option would be great. Okay. And then I can go back to concepts or section. Let's delete this and we'll try to fetch this information again. So I need to delete the source as well. Okay. Probably still pulling out the data from the same place. But what it can really do, so it's supposed to, so that probably URL has the same similar information. I see some information is a little different and it's coming from this family addiction specialist. So let's delete that. Okay, so it can go and identify source of information from new data and come back and use that particular information to give you concepts. What you can also do is, let's say you have a particular content in mind that you want to use from existing research. You can copy it. You can go to sections and use that cogs wheel and paste the data right in it. And then let's delete this and generate information again, right? So now this is net new information from your existing data. So you can really use any existing data, any existing research, any existing information from anywhere and dump it in here to generate concepts from it. Now, let's look at a few other things, right? So some of you might have concerns that, okay, this is existing data. No, it is not. Let's go ahead and look at this. If I copy this, you are not going to find that exact terminology anywhere in here because it is not a rephrased sentence, or it's just not an extractive summary, right? It is more like an abstractive summary with a specific outcome in mind, right? What concepts really is that it is a phrase, a sentence, or a phrase or a sentence, or even a keyword that signifies the true intent of a particular paragraph or a sentence. So what it's really trying to do is that it's trying to extract information that is sufficient enough to influence the AI to write upon or to build a concept upon. So it tries to keep the core meanings or essential information intact, right? And we will look at a few other things as well as we go along. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete all of these things and we can move on to the next one. Now, what I wanted to show is a few other examples, right? So what is steps? Now, step-by-step instructions, like, if you had a question about step-by-step instructions on how to find a counselor, and if that information exists on SERP, you could click on it and it will try. So right now, what it's going to do is it's whatever information that it finds, it's going to try and write it as if it were steps from existing data. So sure, they're not really steps, right? But they're going to be structured and you can see that. So, okay, you can start comparing. This is clinical psychologist versus counseling psychologist. And anything that you see over here is going to be more like steps and it's going to have full stops, right? So you see they are properly formed sentences that you can use to build content upon. While the concepts that you saw earlier did not have full complete sentences. Okay. All right. Let's look at another one. So you see that, right? Like take an action to make it happen, achieve your goal and win. So it's giving you those steps of whatever that you are trying to search. Obviously, in this case, it does not really make sense. This is not a content that you'd write in steps. So, okay. Let's go ahead and look at a few other ones as well. This is introduction. So now what introduction is that it's just going to pick out a few first sentences or a first couple of paragraphs from the data that it's reading. It won't read the entire data. So it's the output is going to be shorter and much more concise. Let's skip this because it's similar to concepts. It's just how much information it gives out. Now let's look at FAQ, or let's look at FAQ for the same section that we are looking at here. Okay, so what FAQ will do is that it will go read the existing information and then suggest what are the questions that were answered by the research that we actually just read. So let's go ahead and generate FAQs. It'll start giving you all the questions that were answered in the content it was. This is awesome, right? So you can create like a list of FAQs in pretty much a few seconds. Okay, now let's say you wanted to write content based on that. Let's go a little specific, right? What is the difference between clinical psychologists Why would someone choose one over the other? What is the difference between, okay, okay, they're all differences related, right? The types of professions that can use that can be called therapist, right? So let's pick this one. This is a little different. So I'm going to convert this to an H3. If you convert to H3, it will drop it right here. If you convert this to an H2, it will drop outside right here, right? Okay. And every time you do this, it will automatically tag the content that it was reading before in it. So you don't have to identify this research again. It automatically knows. Now, what template would you use to answer this particular question, right? What you really need to do is, instead of choosing default or anything like that, because the content that exists out there is a lot, right? And it's not all related to types of what you'd call the therapist or something like that. You want to find that specific part which relates to this particular question when it's reading that data. So what you do then is click on related and generate concepts. And some of the information that you find over here is going to be relevant. Yes, some information can be a little different, which is not relevant. It's okay. Delete or just leave the one, just leave it like that, but use the ones that are relevant to help you build out your section, and you can generate concepts, summarize concepts for it. Okay, so this was like a very quick walkthrough of how you use outranking to create content. Now, let's go to the next step, right? So let's say you have your content now and you want to start scoring it for SEO. You would already see that we've started adding so many topics that are needed. We've started adding some related keyword data as well. We've started adding some questions as well. So as you go about executing this plan that Outranking is suggesting you're more than likely going to cover majority of the requirements that are needed to create an SEO optimized blog post. The remaining part, you can bridge it by clicking on topics. You can see all. Okay. So these are all the keywords that you've used, and there are certain things that you can still use and build your content upon, right? Okay, same goes for related keywords data. And let's say clinical mental health counseling. If this is something that you've not mentioned in your heading and you want to find information about it, you can click AI icon and it will open up this list where you can see how people are mentioning this particular keyword in their content. So let's say you want to see competition. So clinical health counseling programs and other information related to it. If you want to see how you have used in your outline, you can see this is where you have used partially. This is where you've used totally. You've not used it. So that's okay. Now, what does a mental health counselor do? If you want to rewrite this particular sentence by adding this particular keyword in it, you can click on SEO optimize. It will try to add that particular keyword if it can, if it is related, right? So yeah, you see that? How does a clinical mental health counselor, so it just added clinical here. This is great, right? So, and then you can just copy and take it into your content. So if it was like, okay, it already copied it right here. So let's press Control Z and copy. It already copied it, clinical right here. Okay. So this is how you'd use this particular feature to research and then optimize and then rewrite it. Okay, let's quickly go through all of these tabs so you guys have an idea of what is covered in here. Titles means all the titles that are first 20 pages of Google. And you can see, because we have grayed out that information in research, we have expand all and collapse all. So since we have crossed-head, when you go to heading, it is telling you that these are all checked out. You're not supposed to be looking at that. And this is what we gave you as new information. This gives you highest frequency keyword data to sort of give you an understanding of how you'd go about creating that H1 tag. Same thing goes for title, for meta description, for heading. And then in sections, this was the concept builder. This is sections from SERP. You can navigate through each and every individual pages, and they're outlined here as well. You can also sort this outlines by highest frequency keyword data. So let's say you want to find out everything related to substance abuse, maybe, and it will substance abuse, right? So it gave you all the information related to substance abuse. This here, you can use this to rearrange. So let's say I want to rearrange this above that. I can just drag that up over here, rearrange section, and there we go. So it just moved up. Okay, let's go to questions. In questions, these are the questions that came from content. Outranking reads the first 20 pages, right? So it's going to go and find all the questions that everyone has mentioned in their content. And these are all the questions. Some could be relevant, some could be not. What I really like using is Google PA questions. I absolutely almost always try to include as many relevant Google PA questions in the content. I also try to include majority of the keyword related questions because there's direct search volume in it. Make sure to use this question in emphasized tags, right? So what is an emphasized tag means H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, or bold, right? Like you want to give emphasis to a question and let Google know that there's good information over here as well. Okay. The last one is social. This will give you information from Reddit and Quora if there is any good data out there. What I really like relying on is the first, the second, and the third, because this is the data that I can rely on, right? This is something that's proven, that's out there, and I just like data-driven approach better than going about just finding ideas and brainstorming. So, okay, let's go to topic coverage. And topic coverage, I showed exactly like how you'd filter it out. By default, it's showing you 2 words, and you can change that to all. You can also search for that particular keyword if you're looking for over here. Then in clusters, it's going to give lots of one word program. So you can see some main clusters that your competition have mentioned. And this also includes all the keyword data as well, and professional. Okay. Current density. This is the density of your existing content that you've written, right? Let's go to, so it's telling you that, okay, this is your density. Anything between here and here is okay. Here to here, 5 to 7. Now you started getting into that gray area where you might have keyword stuffing issues. You're using some keyword just more and more repetitively. That's when it would turn orange or red. So make sure you scale back a little bit on it if possible. But if scaling back does not make sense, that's okay too. We never advise anyone goes about creating content on how many times they should use a keyword in the content. So that's not the point of doing this. It's just to be mindful of how you write content for better readability as well. So, okay. We already looked at the okay, so let's look at the related keyword data. Let's say if you have your own set of keywords that you want to score the content based on, or you have a virtual assistant who's writing the content for you, for example, or a team member writing the content for you, and you want to give them a specific set of keyword that they need to score content based on, then you can add your manual keywords, or you can also bring in keywords, other related keywords, which are like different cluster, right? Like adjacent cluster or something like that. So mental health counseling, you could have, I don't know, substance abuse, for example, right? Like you want to rank for substance abuse as well at the same time. You could fetch that, add that particular keyword and fetch related keywords associated with that. Okay, we already went through the AI where it's going to show you the information from existing sub data. This is volume of that particular keyword. This is the competition. And this is S represents that this has been used in the SERPs. That means it has been used in the Google ranking pages. And it has been used 77 times. So it's giving that more significance and saying that this is absolutely most important. Okay, since I'm searching for MA, most likely is giving me MA, or there are many people probably searching for mental health counseling from MA, which is Massachusetts, right? Okay, things like that. And if you hover over it, it's going to give you the exact number as well. 14. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go to research. And in research, we've already gone through this, right? So this is the score of that individual page. This is the domain authority. This is the page authority. This is the backlink data. This is the total word count of that particular page. And many cases, it's possible that the data that we got has comments in it, right? And that's why the word count is a little higher. In those cases, you can turn off that particular page from being scored, and you can see over here, okay, this probably has just a lot of sections, or something like that needs improvement. Okay, so now it's scoring based on 2 pages. That's why you can see your scores will change. Okay. Let's go to URL. Quickly, URL is very simple, and it's just suggesting you create a URL based on certain keywords that majority of the competing web pages have repeatedly used. Okay. Down bottom, you can see how many words, characters, and sentences you have in your content. We already went through this cogs wheel where you can control the output of AI using small, medium, high, and by adding tone of voice as well. This is image upload. This is unordered list. This is ordered list, link, H3, H2, H1, and all the above. Okay, let's look at a few more things. I'm trying to find. Okay, so I'm just going to change this to, okay, let's see if we can work with this. So when you select a particular content, there are some icons that you will see over here. This is Content Improver. It will rewrite the content for a second grader. So it's essentially rewriting the content. This will expand the content, but the input needs to be less than or equal to 120 characters. Right now we have 203 characters that we have selected, right? Okay, this is shortener, and this can shorten this particular text, or has to be less than 200 characters. It's a little above that, and these are some really requirements of GPT-3. But okay, let's keep looking at a few more. Now, this AI icon, this is sort of an instruct, right? So this is sort of like an on-demand assistant that you can ask pretty much anything, or ask it to write anything, or research for you, or build out certain aspects for you. Let's say write a conclusion for the blog post, right? And I could just select this. Okay. It will start writing, and you can be more specific as to what sort of conclusion do you want to write, and just take it from there. You can ask it to add some keywords to it, or you could say, right? Okay. And if I wanted to force by adding a bullet point, then I would start with a dash right here, or you could start with a bullet, right? So bullet is not something that GPT-3 is going to understand. You could say dash, and it'll start giving you dashes after that. So there we go. So it wrote a couple of bullets right here. There you go. So just things like that, right? So you can instruct it to do quite a few things for you. Okay, this will convert any text into a question format. So let's try that. Okay, it can. This is great, right? And I mean, there are many use cases for this that you can use. Okay, let's select some content here and look at the last one right here. So it's showing you how many characters that you had selected. Okay, this will bring back the AI wizard, and this will allow you to share the documents with an external person. So not someone on your team, but someone other than your team that you probably need approval from, or you want to circulate this particular content to, or get some feedback on, right? So you can give them also view and edit rights. If you give them edit rights from here, your team members or the person that you're giving rights to is not going to be able to use AI. In order for you to use AI, you have to add them as a team member and not just share this document. Okay, a couple of last things over here. You can also do multi-keyword research by adding a second keyword. For example, let's go to related keywords, right? And related keywords, I'm just going to get a quick idea of what degree in mental health. Okay, so let's say I want to also rank for degree in mental health besides this particular keyword for the same content. So I would add degree in mental health and search for that particular content again. And it will go fetch that content again and rebuild the research. But you can switch back and forth between both the keywords while keeping the same content. So you can score the same content for two different keywords. I'll just take a couple of seconds. So I've gone through a lot of things here, like 50 minutes nonstop. Feel free to stop me and ask any questions at this point. We're getting to the end of that entire demo. No questions? You're very welcome.
Oh, hi, Pankel. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. I was just going to say, so can you just go with a question, let's say, for example, from Google or whatever that you searched, and go directly into the concepts part and build that particular, and then it gives you, for example, I was trying to look on the website from Outranking, how to go about maybe building my post, but I guess it automatically populates everything on the right-hand side that you see there for the SEO score. Is that correct?
I'm trying to understand the question. Can you rephrase that?
Yeah. For example, you have an H1 tag, and the H1 tag, then I guess once you populate everything on sections on that side there, it automatically populates all of the, the far right hand side where you have sections, headings, questions, that sort of, that's the actual build out for the actual blog post.
No, actually, this is actually existing information now. So all the content that you actually need, right, it's all already in the editor. Besides your outline and your concepts part, everything is in the editor, right, that you're creating. What this really is it's details of where we are getting the data from. So you can take
Oh,
a
I see.
reference. You can go back and reference this and adjust based on what you see. That might be the differences.
Yeah, I guess I had a tough time following that part because I was trying to wonder, where does it build? When you talk about a template, I guess I was misunderstanding. So the template that you're building for a particular, I guess, question or query, how exactly do I follow that, or where do I follow that?
So again, trying to understand.
Yeah. So for example, it says, what does a mental health counselor do? That's fine. So now I guess I'm looking to see how I populate everything on the left side of that screen. And you went there pretty quickly with all the
Okay.
garbage cans and so
So
forth. I'm just trying to find out, okay, what if I were to pick something, because you're trying to cover, a very generic, I think, for everybody to understand. But I think in terms of more specifically, can you just maybe answer the one question, figure out what you need, and then is that how it works? And you go to the next question, that sort of thing? Or
yes, that's
what prompts you to that next question, I guess is what I'm getting at. Let's say the H2s or the H3s.
so these are the outlines that we created from our research, right? From the AI wizard.
Right.
I
And that
just
was not
brought
that
them
was
on.
based on the query, correct? On
That
the
was
H1
based on the
tag.
no, that's based on the keyword that we added in order to create the document. So when you went through wizard 1, 2, and 3, this is where we saw all the ideas related to outlines, and we added the outlines over here.
Right.
You saw all the outlines from your SERP data. You saw everything from Google PA. You can also add your own and create that structure that you need to execute for this particular blog post.
Right.
And click on create sections and outlines. When you do that, it's going to move over to this particular screen and have all your H2s and H3s that you build it out in the AI wizard already here. After that,
Right.
all you need to do is start generating concepts.
So so that's very quick. It's incredibly quick. So all you're saying is then once you go, it automatically knows what outline to build.
Yeah, so you build the outline with a little bit of manual help, and what we suggested in this data, so you added a few things and you created, you clicked on this button, create sections outline. That's when it added all the information that we had built it out in the AI wizard into the editor. So it needed to add all this information. It added that automatically, and it added all the sections that you see over here. Okay, now what you do is you start writing these individual sections or H2s or H3s, right?
Right.
So in that case, all you have to do is click this, and then let's delete this again. I'll delete this again. And just click on generate
Yeah.
concept.
So why were you deleting that? Why did you delete that?
Because it was not there before.
Oh, I see.
When the first time you come here, it's not going to be there, right? So you're going to have to click once.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And once you click on that once, you have all the ideas that you need to build your content based upon, right? So in that case, what you would do is, let's go ahead and I'm going to counselors too, just change it a little bit so it adds a new data. Okay, so now after you have all the data, just click on the ones that you think are relevant to building out the first paragraph for this particular section. And then just click summarize concept. Okay, there you go. So this build it out based on those particular concepts. So it's even added the amount of money and stuff like that that it is talking about in here. And then you can just start quickly going through what's relevant and clicking summarize.
Yeah, that's a little more helpful. That's for sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that you mentioned while you were doing that I think in the sections area, where you plug in a URL. I think that hide all button would be very useful.
The what would be useful?
Hide all button.
Yes, a hide all, right? Like, yeah,
because
this
you're
is like
clicking. Yeah.
Too many buttons to shut it. Yes, I agree. And this problem is like recent, right? Like as people start creating content around various niches, we'd start seeing some issues, right? Where some niches just practically have no keywords at all, right? It has very little information, and whatever information is out there is super crap. So we've started seeing some of those challenges. So we're constantly optimizing our algorithms to make sure that we adjust to that. And one of these things was suggested by a user based on that. So we've added that to the roadmap.
So could you just explain to me, like, in terms of, so for example, GPT-3, whatever, that's a library, correct?
No, so GPT-3, think of GPT-3 as a supercomputer that was
Right.
ingested with about 10% of the web. So what it has a lot of information, but it does not know what to prioritize. So it does not know whether what is more true, what is less true, what is more relevant, what is less relevant. So it generates text based on probabilities. And that's why it can give you fluff, it can wander off, it can be more creative than you need it to be. It can lie, right? Like all sorts of things. So that is why there's this extra layer where now you are influencing it with existing factual research so that it writes factual and it doesn't go off tangent.
And that's where outranking comes in. That's where your particular software does that. It actually extracts what is benefits or intent sort of things that's needed.
Right. Exactly. And this is a paramount of importance because GPT-3 or any AI cannot keep just ingesting data in and have like this sort of, infinite library of things. Even if it does, it's still going to work on probability. And that is not a game that you want to play with your clients or data that your readers are reading. So it becomes problem when you're writing long form factual content. If you're doing some brainstorm ideation, then GPT works great.
So what is the maximum words or paragraphs or words in a paragraph that you can get? We can extract the information that is factual where it runs off, let's say, and that it's not so factual or not so relevant.
So now you don't have to worry about that, right? Like Outranking has built this engine, this search engine, which reads data in fragments that are going to give you the most relevant output. So what we've done is, because there are some restrictions, we've limited this to 1800 characters. But what Outranking can read from existing research, there's no limit to it. And all the data that it gathers is going to be of equal quality.
So for example, if I have a URL that I've written out to, let's say in a Google Doc, can I put that URL in there and then it will tell me what the SEO score is? Is that correct?
Yeah, it will tell you the SEO score of that particular URL.
And then I would augment that article to get a higher score based on using outranking.
Right, but
I'm asking the question
out
of ignorance. Sorry, I apologize. But
just to make sure whatever content you write is unique, has added value, and is better than what you're writing, better than what's out there already. So, everything else, I'd just leave it out in the open. People do all sorts of things. So.
Oh, is that right? Okay, well, I guess I was thinking in terms of me writing. I usually write in a Google Doc, and then I can take that URL onto here, correct? And then augment it in such a way that I can
you can just
score up.
You can just copy and paste it. And,
I see. Okay.
Yeah, just copy and paste the content here and adjust these parameters. That's it.
Oh, in there. Okay, right.
So when you come to a new document, you just close the AI wizard or whatever, you're going to see this, right? Or if you already have it, then no problem. Just copy the remaining part from your Google Doc and just leave what you have up here as is. Right.
But the keyword has to be in there, correct?
It's going to tell you if it is not, right? Like you will see the score changes. So yeah, you're going to have to create a document for it. And the document needs a keyword.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thursday's webinar will cover more methods. Since we already went through a lot over here, we have some exciting methods coming up, lots of it actually for different use cases. So we'll go a little more in depth on how you can actually use methods to create your own method. So that's something that I want to enable. A lot of people have been submitting methods, but they're not designed correctly. And I think it's part of our mistake is because we haven't enabled users to come up with this particular methods in a better way. So we're going to do that. We're going to enable you guys with this video about methods, how you can create your custom methods, how you can use certain methods over here, and how you can make certain methods your own and like customize it. So we'll do that. Yes, the registration is going to be live up in just a second, right after I close this webinar. So great stuff, guys. We're 4 minutes. This was wonderful. Lots of questions. And if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or send me an email, and happy to answer and help you guys in any way we can. So thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you on Thursday or next week, or see you in the room.